You are listening to Fika with Vicky on United Public Radio, 107.7 and 105.3 from New Orleans.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Fika with today's guest, Reva Leah Stern, and me, your host, Vicky Bennison. Reva is an author, editor, and writer, director, producer, and art designer of over 100 theater, movie, and television productions. And I have read she does it all on decaffeinated coffee. I can't even imagine. Needed a little coffee myself, not decaffeinated, while trying to fit all that is her life into 60 minutes. It's taken a lot of editing as well. So we'll be doing a wide view of Miss Stern's accomplishments while focusing on her two of her novels, the Prescott Journals and the water buffalo that shed her girdle, which is a little shiny here, but that's okay. It should be shiny. It's a star. I chose these two books, these two works, because even though they are considered two different genres, they share the theme of starting over with a new life. And that starting over in Reva's books involves resilience, forging forward, using what life has given you, and a lot of laughter. Disclaimer, there are some tears too. Often there is no time in this world to grieve when you separate from a spouse, child, or parent. There are bills to be paid. Food needs to reach the table. The show must go on, which in Reva's world is often literal and wisely shared in a been there, done that, looking forward to and preparing for what's next method. Thank you for sharing your stories, Reva, and your methods. Welcome to Fika. So I guess we'll start with the water buffalo that shed her girdle, which has taken me a week to memorize that title in the right formula. You say, whereas the Prescott Journals is a mystery thriller, you say that the water buffalo that shed her girdle is a creative nonfiction. What does creative nonfiction mean to you, and how does it apply to this book?
Well, generally people talk about memoirs, the story of their lives, and they're meant to be factual, so that if you write a story and if you write a memoir, your family can say, the family can read it and either be embarrassed by it, or they can be proud of it, or they can see themselves in it, and they can accuse you of being a traitor. When you write a creative nonfiction, what you do is you take your life story and you fictionalize it. You become more creative. They used to call it poetic license. But it became a thing with Oprah Winfrey when, and I wasn't prepared, so I don't remember the name of the book, but it became a scandal because there was a young man who wrote a wonderful book, bestseller, and it was about him being in prison for a long time and the things that happened to him, and she raved about the book. She put it on her bestseller list, and then found out sometime after that it really wasn't real. He did write it about his life, but he wasn't in prison for a year. He was in prison for a couple of months, and he wasn't this and he wasn't that, but it was all based in fact, but he didn't know what to do. He was completely devastated. And then I don't know whether it was his publisher or his agent came up with the idea of creative nonfiction. So that stuck with me, and I thought that's a really good idea. So that's what I did. I didn't want my family to be out front and personal. And it was very personal to me, so I needed to write it, but I also needed to kind of protect my family, the not knowing who might or might not be upset or devastated by it. So that's what I came up with, a creative nonfiction.
You talk about writing about your hometown in the Prescott Journals as being daring, but writing a memoir is just as daring. You never know how people are going to take things, or just privacy issues in general. So it's pretty brave. Now, this book involves a woman's separation and then a separation of a child and how she deals with all of this. Now, you went on a book tour with this, and you said that you were amazed by the amount of women that came up and related to that story.
Not only did women come up, but women women who were either, some actually were widowed, but some were divorced. Many were divorced or separated, and they were actually arranging their book clubs to have me come and speak because they read the book and shared similar experiences. And and I was really amazed to find out how many women have gone through the experience of being estranged from a child. It was shocking to me. So a lot of the popularity from it came surprisingly from people who saw it as comfort, because I write it from a very darkly humorous point of view, and they couldn't understand how I could go through something so terribly painful and tragic and still find some kind of strange humor. And it gave them comfort. So that was very, very appealing to me.
And did it make you feel that your writing was important?
It did. It did. I was very worried about that book for as I was writing it, and was confronted with a lot of negativity when it was published from people close to me. And so when this happened and women were getting comfort from it, it did help a lot.
It isn't a subject that's talked about a lot because I feel there's guilt and shame involved, and so there's not a lot of sharing of that. If someone loses a child, yes, but it's the same as losing a child without the sympathy, because you must have done something wrong. And that is on the back of the book, in the blurb section, or it'll be at the back if you have an e-copy. There is a blurb by and I'm not gonna remember. There we go. There it went. Okay. I can't remember all the names, people. I have to have notes for all and in this case, with Reva, it's impossible. There are so many names. Elizabeth Forsyth Haley wrote as part of her blurb, the water buffalo that shed her girdle will strike chords of recognition in many women who were brought up to believe that the success of a marriage is in their hands alone. And this is an added pressure, has been an added pressure to many women, that, if I just did this right or that right, or I blame Freud, but if and he's not here to argue for himself. So do you think that's still as much of a part of society today as it was, or do you think we're moving on a little bit from that idea?
I wish. I really sincerely wish. No, I don't think we're moving on. I don't think when someone hears about a conflict between parents and children, or the child becomes estranged, the first question is, what did they do? As the assumption is made that the parent did something. Well, the parent did something or didn't do something, and I guess in a way that is true. But because we still see the mother as the nurturer, it must be the mother that caused the problem.
And became the Black Widow, and
and all that good stuff.
Good stuff. Yeah, and it is unfortunate. I remember my son came to me at one point with a line that he had heard, that, your mother is not your therapist. She bakes cookies. And I thought that has summed it up so much. So this book really is a service to walk into that world and say, although it is, as we said, creative nonfiction, but I understand this, and allowing other people to share in that is a great gift.
It was really meant to be meant to read like a novel, but it was still based in fact.
Yeah. So you understood and you shared that. Robin Sims says, hello, Robin. Sadly, it's quite common in today's world. It is really nice, Reva, that you write about this subject. And you know what? I think it's because today's world is, for many, many centuries, you left home, you traveled 2 miles, you never saw the other person again because there wasn't transportation, there wasn't a phone, there wasn't an internet, right? So if you wanted to go live your life, it didn't have that, it's just, I'm going to America or whatever the thing may be. Zora's with us today. I will get back to your email, Zora. Oh, she read the whole book and she loved it. And she also says earlier, words of wisdom from Reva, I respect.
Thank you.
Zora is in the house. So yeah, it is a lot of this. Now we're going to tie that in with the Prescott Journals, but could you tell us a brief synopsis? That one will get people to buy it, and two, that's their goal, and two, so they can follow our conversation a little better.
Sure. I can tell you the root of it, why I wrote it. I was artistic director of a theater, and every morning when I came into my office, my secretary would put a pile of newspapers on my desk, and she would put, if the play had just opened, she would put them in order of reviews. If there wasn't a play, she just put them down any which way. And it happened that the Toronto Star was on the very top. I got into the office and I took off my coat and I leaned over and I looked at the headline, and it said, child prostitution ring, child pornography uncovered in Prescott, Ontario. And I just about choked because I'm from Prescott, Ontario, and it was a quiet, sleepy, lovely little town, and no such thing ever happened in that town when I lived there as a kid, and I was in shock. And it stayed with me for a long time, and I was moving on from that theater, and I was visiting my brother in California. He's a writer and film director, and I had this great idea for him. It's a year later, and couldn't get this story out of my mind, the idea of it. So I pitched this idea to him for a screenplay for him to write, and he said, no, I'm not going to write it. And I said, you don't like the idea? He said, no, I love the idea, but I'm not writing it. You are. And I said, I don't write screenplays. I write plays. He said, no, you're going to write a book. And I said, that'll never happen. I'm not writing a whole book. Well, I did, because he kept at me, and I did. And as you begin to write, the story finds you. You start to do your research. You start to look into the possibilities, the options, the ideas. You stretch yourself into all kinds of contortions, and you find things that keep characters and plot lines that just keep coming to you. And a lot of it came to me because I actually did remember things from my childhood, not about child pornography, but other characters in the area that were very undesirable, and things that happened that were very distasteful, nothing to do with pornography again. And so those things began to help me formulate the story that ended up 500 pages.
And Brian Greiner, if you're out there, don't feel so bad. They're always after him to write smaller books. It was worth every one of those pages. Okay. I read through it and it covered so much. It was a big story. Now it goes into you wrote that you finally dared to write this book. And I can imagine writing about your hometown is as worrying as writing your memoirs and the people that affected. So I have a billion things in my mind that I would be thinking, what were the things that you found most daring about doing this, aside from the bringing up the child pornography ring?
I was worried because I'm still in touch with people I grew up with in the town, people that my family knew, and I was worried that they might be upset because the town went through a terrible ordeal when the case actually went to court in Brockville, which is 12 miles from Prescott. The people in Prescott, the press needed to stay somewhere, so there was media everywhere. There were cameras in everybody's face, and this town suffered. Everybody was suspect. If a man walked down the street with his child hand in hand, it was suspect. And these people went through hell. So bringing this up again, 30 years, it was, well, at the time I wrote it, it was about 25 years later. It just, I was worried that I would hurt people, that people would be upset, that the town would be affected. But it seems like quite the opposite happened. I think that people they read a lot in Prescott. They have an amazing library and an incredible librarian. And I think that it helped them. It brought it. I think it made the town seem more quaint and picturesque and friendly than
It wasn't. No, it wasn't the town's fault. It was
right.
individuals' fault, and it
And
was
they
like
and they lived about 10 miles outside of the town. They lived way back in the backwoods, as they call it. They weren't even town's people.
or people maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, or people.
And it touches some other touchy situations as well, but it was all done. Now, is there's the pressure of writing in the hometown, but when you're writing about a topic so sensitive as the abuse of children, and there's some anti-Semitic actions in there, just a lot of things we don't like to think about society. When you're writing something, that is that extra pressure and stress, like you don't want to write the wrong thing, aside from the people in town. You don't want to hurt anyone that's been through anything like that, or bring it up. Did you feel extra pressure with that?
No, because I've been writing about that. That's those topics for not about children so much, but about Holocaust and about anti-Semitism, xenophobia for a very long time in plays and in short stories and newspapers. So it wasn't. I didn't feel that kind of pressure. I felt it more as an honor to be able to expose it again and talk about it and stop blaming the wrong people and start blaming the right people. So
And so you worked your way up to this book in a lot of ways. It's not something that you would have written maybe 15 years earlier.
I did. It was the first
Oh,
book I ever wrote, and I started it 25 years ago.
oh, the Prescott Journals, or so it's taken 25 years to
get it published properly. Yes.
yes.
My first book was The Water Buffalo.
Yeah. Yeah. And there is also another book that I didn't. So Reva's just gonna have to come back again because I say my name. And no, I did not get to that because authors have to be understanding if they send me books this big that there's only going to be like 2 read. Okay. that has to be seen. And still, well, anyways, Brian asked. I should have checked Brian's question first. I did a quick check, and your ebooks are available on Amazon. Oh, Brian, here he goes again, but not on Kobo, a Canadian ebook
It's
retailer.
just awful.
Brian is on a mission.
Brian, stick with the mission, please.
I know, because I told him, okay, we're going to talk name brands here, people. And Kobo, if you want to, if anybody wants to sponsor me, go ahead. But I started with Kobo when I first started getting ebooks because it was Canadian, and I like to support that. But it didn't seem to have as many books available at that time. So I caved because I didn't want to have a billion different companies and that and things. So Brian carries on. He will never give up. Have you considered? Brian, get the books and then talk to me. Oh, okay. That's just my husband is listening as he goes out and enjoys an afternoon. So I think people out there in the world that these are incredible books, and I don't want to make them sound too they're very serious subjects, but somehow Reva can bring laughter into them as well. There is romance, there is history, there is if you are of a if you are of an age that you may enjoy the mentioning of old and that's it because I know you. Now this book takes place in 1991. So the characters cannot, which is probably when you started writing it. The characters cannot simply pick up a cell phone and say, hey, this is, they can't take the smartphone and look up on the computer. Even if they had phones, which were extremely expensive at that time, everybody was just getting used to computers, and the service wasn't there. I mean, this is a rural area, and in northwestern. Is that where we would put Prescott?
Eastern.
It's north.
Port Ottawa.
Port, yeah. So this they couldn't get service half the time, and they probably couldn't today too at some of those places. I know as we travel about. So this reminded me of what it was like. It wasn't, there was more suspense in a different kind of way at that time because you don't know if people are going to get there in time. Or did you I know that you are not completely fond of a lot of all the social medias and stuff. Did you find it more enjoyable to write this book because of that?
Sure. I hate social media. So, I mean, blogs and that kind of thing I can enjoy on my computer, but I'm not on Facebook, and I'm not on Instagram, and I'm not on nothing. So so it wasn't a big jump for me. I mean, the fact that it didn't exist was great. It was just great.
That's what I was thinking as I was reading it, and I was thinking about you, and I'm like, but now that you said it took you 25, like I was, first of all, never feel bad for that. There are many people that feel like that, and it has good sides and it has bad sides. So we all have our feelings on technology, but. But I actually thought maybe you did it on purpose. See, I was accusing you, but the book actually started back then. So no, you're much.
I just say, Vicky, it was more interesting that it was back then when there wasn't social media, then there wasn't pornography easy at the fingertips, and that was a bad choice of words, but it was it was more difficult, and therefore more secretive, harder to detect, harder to find, harder for the police to find. because it was all live, it was all actually happening in reality, but no record, really.
Yeah, because and even the town would have been hit even harder because you have all those little shows like Fika on the side, but looking to get those clicks and not it's sad. It's sad that people will use such a thing to promote themselves. I realize that's how it's done, but that's why I will always be just I'm not going to do that. I'm not going um to do that. So oh, okay. Now Zora's telling me, okay, Zora, I'm going to get to it and read. Zora says, I say my name, which I showed before. It's a gripping fiction that is very real because it's real. It's real. It's a real topic. Everyone must read I Say My Name. And so Zara is saying, read. Zara says. And so we should. And I'm going to. I just had another big book to read. You guys really just hit me when I read The Other Eye. That was also large. Brian is saying, Reva, given that you've been an editor as well as a writer, do these different parts of your brain clash when you write?
I'm going to try to answer this without getting myself into trouble. When I'm editing, and I'm a story editor. I'm not a copy editor or a proofreader. I do that, but that's not my specialty. I'm a story editor. So when I'm editing an experienced writer, someone who has written and been published, it is a problem because you kind of want to explain to this particular writer what you think you think this should go, how this line or this storyline or this plot line, and you do tell them, but you really want to just show them, and you can't because they're experienced, and you're going to point out what you see as a defect or an issue or a weakness, and then they'll fix it. You'll explain what it is you see, and they'll fix it. When you're dealing with somebody who has a wonderful imagination, a great story to tell, but they're not experienced in telling a story, so they need help in telling the story, then most often they'll say, well, show me, do it for me, kind of thing, show me. So I'll take their story and then do a rewrite of it. And then I don't have a conflict because then I'm doing what I'm asking an experienced writer to do, but I'm able to do it myself. And then they can either accept it or not. They can say, well, that's not exactly the way I would like to express it or something. So yeah, sometimes you have a conflict. But most of the time when you're editing an experienced writer, they will understand, because that's what you're there for, your point, and they will try and do a rewrite or revision, and it usually you'll come to a yes, this is now working perfectly kind of situation.
Relationship in the story is. Do you find that people who have written a lot and have been through the process a lot are a little bit more ready to let go of bits of their baby, the book, than somebody who is just new to the process?
No, I find the opposite. There's one in the middle. There's a situation in the middle. The person who's very experienced, it's not that they don't want to let go of because they're married to it. It's because they have to be convinced that there's a problem. So it's more, I'm experienced, I know what I'm doing. So, so it's more difficult for them to see the problem sometimes. Then on the other side is the inexperienced writer who really wants to start. And some of them do, like Zora is someone that I've edited, and she's a remarkable writer. I mean, she's an amazing poet, but she has she has begun to write now and understands how to mold a story. And so the process of editing her as a lesser, as a more very experienced poet, but a less experienced prose writer or literary writer, has helped her to become now more confident about her literary or prose writing. But then there's that person in between who is a new writer and had this idea, and all their friends said, it's great, it's perfect, you don't need to do anything with it. And then, of course, in order to get published, you really need to do something. You need to speak to a professional, and they're not ready to let go. So that's more difficult. That's where the more difficult one is.
The middle ground.
Yeah.
Since we're on the topic of writing and putting it out there for other people to see, whether it's an editor, you talked about the reviews coming in for your shows. And so you have a lot of experience with reviews, as in, so what is your suggestions for people to deal with reviews, whether good or bad, or on their books, their plays, whatever?
I look at critical review. Review in a bit of an unusual way. When I was doing theater, I had an issue once. I directed a play at a time when I was going through my divorce, and I was not as focused on the play as I should have been, in terms of I was feeling very, very depressed. So the play, which has a lot of comedy connected to it, did not come off on the stage. And the playwright who wrote it is a very, very well-known playwright. His name is William Gibson, and we were very good friends. He wrote The Miracle Worker and Two for the Seesaw. And I was doing actually Two for the Seesaw. I was directing it. And the reviewer from the Globe and Mail wrote the review, and he said that he was shocked, because usually, Reva has a little spark, a little unusual edge, and I didn't see that. I was very unimpressed, because where I expected a certain attention to the comedy aspect, which is very subtle, it wasn't there. I was so upset, so I called Bill Gibson, and I told him, I said, I'm dealing with all this stuff, and this is terrible. And he said, well, I didn't see it. I'm not there. I'm in Boston. Is he right? And I stopped and said, you know what? He is right. He's right. And I called this critic, and he said, this is the first time this ever happened. I took him out to lunch, and I thanked him, because he was right. So I think it depends on who the criticism. This was a respected critic for the Globe and Mail at the time. And I think it depends on where you're getting the criticism. If it's a friend that is, maybe a little jealous or something, I don't know. I've never had that happen, but I guess it depends on from where the criticism is coming. You have to respect the person in order to value the criticism. If you're getting criticism, or maybe the person isn't a big reader, doesn't understand what you were trying to say or do. If the criticism is real criticism, if it's honest, if it's, no, I didn't quite understand, can you explain this to me? Or I felt it was a bit this or that. But if the criticism is, oh, that book sucks, you were terrible, why did you write that crap? Well, then you've got a different perspective.
Right.
And
so if in the author arena, if it's a longtime reader, if it's somebody who's writing you respect, all of those things would make a difference, as opposed to the why are they getting 5 stars kind of person.
Yeah.
I mean, the more successful you are, people tend to be a little more difficult sometimes.
Yeah.
because as you pointed out, they're jealous. So just look at who it's coming from, and that's good. I haven't thought about the
constructive criticism is always really useful. It's the only way we know whether we're whether we're on the right track.
Right. How else are we going to learn? There's not, Reva, given that you've been an editor, once again, to author Brian Greiner. Reva, given that you've been an editor as well as a
We
writer,
did
do
that.
those different parts of your brain? Oh, I did that. Okay. I told you I need to get that appointment made. Robin, what is it like, Reva, to be a director? I was going to ask that, Robin. It must be really interesting and challenging at times. So here we go.
Okay. I love directing. I haven't done it for a while now. I love it, and I love it more when I directed across the United States because I wasn't producing the show, so there was always a producer that had to take care of everything I needed. So if I needed the set repainted, or I needed to change this costume because I don't think it suits or it fits, or I didn't have to do that work. When you're artistic director, that's also your job. You have to take care of everything. So you're casting and you're hiring the crew, and you are in charge of everything. And so when you're directing, you're wearing so many hats, and you've got to, when you get into the rehearsal hall, you really have to focus on the story, on the actors, what they need, the set designers. So it is a lot of responsibility. You wear many hats, but it is the most wonderful experience because you're like a painter. You're painting the picture. But honestly, when you're a director working for other producers or other artistic directors, other theaters, it's the best because you don't have to worry. You tell them what you want. Like, I want this, I don't want the set pink. I really would like it yellow. And then it's done. And you don't have to worry about the budget. You don't have to worry about going over the budget. You just worry about getting that show up and running and being proud of your work and making sure that the actors are happy and the designers are happy. And it's great.
And so being a director is like being a princess. But a princess doesn't have, well, I mean, in
who
real
has to
life.
scrub floors and
But I mean, this is important to say because it would be important to you because you grew into theater. This wasn't something that you picked or I'm going to do this. I mean, you've picked it probably several times since then, but you went in voluntarily. You went in there with no cash, working for, for public organizations and stuff. So you were working with like this skinny little budget and the skinny little things. And how does one go from that to being the one sitting in the director's chair?
I'll tell you exactly what happened. I was doing, it was basically sort of upper end community theater, and we did a play before the movie ever came out called One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And we did it in this auditorium and ran for a couple of weeks. And we were the only community theater that got reviewed in the Toronto papers. They came to all our shows and they reviewed us, and they reviewed One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And one night when I arrived, I was out I was in the lobby. I was just going to go backstage to check on the cast and crew. And the house manager came up to me and said, "Reva, there's somebody that wants to see you after the show." I said, "Oh, okay, I'll be around." And then when the show started, I walked into the theater and I was looking at the audience. The show hadn't started yet. We were just about to start. And I was looking at the audience, and there was a group of people that looked very familiar. Some of them looked familiar, but I'd never seen them before. I mean, I'd never seen them in that theater before. And after the show, the house manager said, "I'd like to introduce you to these people." There was a group of people that came to see the show. They were from the Stratford Company, and they had heard about the show, and they drove in to see it. And that was, to me, amazing. But also that night, there happened to be a gentleman in the audience who was involved with a family that were building this enormous cultural center. And he recommended me to that family. They called me. I went for an interview, and that was the beginning. That's how I started to make the transition from community theater into professional theater. No,
Because you were good at volunteering.
yeah, I was good at volunteering.
Now, did it make a difference to you when you were being paid? Like, did you feel more pressure, or is it just about getting the show done as well as it can be done, regardless?
Yes, it doesn't matter. You want the show to be the greatest thing ever. But yes, your access to things and to people changes completely. You know, I worked with a lot of well-known actors. I was able to direct and reach well-known actors because I was now part of the professional theater community. I was a member of the unions and so on and so forth. So yes, it changed. It changed. But I still always had that community element to my theater. We brought in apprentices, trained people. We opened a theater school in that facility. We had 800 students when the theater closed. 800 students, active students.
Well, I think just by reading your books and seeing other things that you've done, that you are extremely compassionate person who is willing to give anyone who's trying that extra little lift because someone gave it to you. So I think that shows right across the, I'm going to say screen, but there isn't a screen in theater. Right across the whole field. And then she had a question and it went away. Oh, I wanted to say that this story, if you're also interested in theater and you know how someone gets a career, and or just like hearing nostalgia and how things happen, that is also a big part of the water buffalo that shed her girdle. Now that I have that memorized, I'm going to say it over and over again. But it does discuss in a creative nonfiction, a creative nonfiction way about your career in the theater and how you rose through it and experiences that you had there. Now, I'm going to bring this up, people, because it might come up again. And I want to say, first off, that Reva is a very trusting person too, because she said, "Don't give me a question sheet. I'm just going to go with it." I trust you. It's good. So if there's anything that comes up that she doesn't quite remember, she wasn't back figuring it out a couple of days ago. Okay, she's going cold, baby. This is all cold and it's raw. Reva Leah Stern here today on Fika with Vicky. Before we get on, okay, we're good. Okay, so let's go through. You just mentioned, I'm not usually big on name dropping, but this is fun. Okay, so you just mentioned you met a lot of famous people while doing this. Do you want to run through a few of your, not favorites, but ones that come to your mind today without preparation?
Sure. Let's see. I mean, I don't know the age group of your demographic, but they may not remember any of these people.
I 1:00 in the afternoon. I feel like I have an audience that would.
Okay. Well, if anyone remembers Barbara Rush from the Philadelphia Story, she worked with Rock Hudson and she worked with Frank Sinatra. And I worked with her on Woman of Independent Means. We introduced it at the theater, and then we did it again because it was so popular. We brought it back, and she and I became very, very good friends. And through her, I used to travel a lot to LA. My family's in Los Angeles, and we would get together, and I would meet a lot of other people through her. And so I met a lot of writers, and that's why you mentioned Elizabeth Forsyth Haley. She's the person who wrote A Woman of Independent Means, which we produced at the theater. But I worked with Joel Grey, Herschel Bernardi. Oh my goodness. Let me think.
I want to say it's not Ben Stiller. It's his
Oh, no, I didn't. Jerry Stiller, but I didn't work with Jerry Stiller. What happened with Jerry Stiller was I was casting a play. I think it was called. I think it was Cold Storage. I think that's the one I was doing, and he was booked to. He was committed, but there's a 60-day clause where you have film actors. There's always a 60-day clause, so that if a film comes up within 60 days of the beginning of a rehearsal, then they can opt out because of the film. So I had lunch with him in New York, and he was very excited about doing the show. And then he had to cancel. And I happened to be going back to New York. So he sent a notice or phone call. I got a message that he wanted to meet with me if I was coming to New York, or else he would call me. So I had my secretary tell him, I'm coming to New York next week. I'll meet with you. And he was so apologetic because he had just gotten notice that he was going to have a regular gig on this new show called Seinfeld. So he wouldn't be able to do my show. So that was that. And then another time, I had a deal with, oh my goodness, what was his name? Oh, I can't remember his name. It'll come to me. And again, I didn't hear from him, but his agent called me and said, Reva, I'm really sorry, but he got a film and he's going to be shooting at exactly the same time. Just before he starts, just before you go into rehearsal. Anyway, I had to go to LA, and I always stayed with one of my brothers when I was there. And I was with my brother, and he said, do you want to come on the shoot with me today? Because if you've got a free day. And I said, sure. So I went on the shoot, and who was there? Martin Balsam was his name. Martin Balsam, who was working for my brother. I didn't know, and he didn't know that. He didn't put the two of us together. And I said, this is the movie. And I had no idea. So,
have you forgiven your brother for that?
it was very funny. Anyway, I ended up with another person that I really admire. He passed away last year at 102, and he was still a working actor. His name was Nehemiah Persoff, and you may not know the name, but you saw him in a gazillion films. I don't know if anybody ever saw the film Yentl, but with Barbara Streisand, he played her father in the movie. So I ended up directing him in 5 different plays after that. So I have, I'm trying to think. Oh, I know who. As a matter of fact, I think I gave her first role in Toronto. Louise Petra. Louise Petra ended up in my production of Applause. And I called Marlene Smith, who was the producer of Cats downtown, and Marlene and I were friends. And I said, you've got to come opening night. Do not miss seeing this woman. She is unbelievable, and nobody has given her a break yet. So she came, and she cast her in the production of Beehive, which was playing she played Janis Joplin at the Royal York. And from there, she ended up with the lead in Les Mis in Toronto, and then on Broadway, and was she's just a brilliant actress. And she started at the theater because she hadn't done anything in Toronto before that.
Now, as kids, because your family is very involved in this, as kids, according to your creative nonfiction, your parents didn't have anything to do with the theater world. This started, were you like huge television fans, or where did this energy come from?
We were all big television fans. We were all big movie fans. My parents met because of a movie theater. My mother was a cashier in a movie theater. My father kept coming and buying tickets to the same show week after week. So we were all big movie fans. But my oldest brother, the one that I told you about, that I pitched the book idea or the screenplay idea, he actually is a doctor. He became a doctor, but was always a writer. And so once he was living in Toronto at the time, and he had his practice on Spadina, and he was writing at the same time, and everything he wrote, he ended up selling to CBC. And then the US saw his stuff and loved it and started commissioning him. And finally, he was so busy writing, he gave up his practice, took his wife and 4 kids and moved to LA. But my other brother was already there because he went to Ryerson and became a director.
For that reason.
Yeah, for that reason alone. He was always
that, don't go to school for
No,
this.
and
You
I
need to
came-
have a full act, be a doctor. And
That's exactly what it was. And I was going to be a lawyer. I came here to become a lawyer. And so I ended up in theater, and my sister ended up in the fashion industry. So we were all kind of in the same kind of,
of circle and having fun. And this is it's a wonderful ending, because I mean, not that it's ending, it's still going on. I don't want to say that. But your family worked its way up, most definitely, from those people. You just have to read The Water Buffalo Shed Her Girdle. Okay. I'm sitting here not wanting to give spoilers, but it's wonderful. It's wonderful to see that, to take that imagination, that courage to keep trying new things and to keep putting yourself out there. Unfortunately, reading your list has had the theme song to Love American Style going through my head, because one of the writers worked on that, and you can't hear that phrase without hearing that song, right? It's but you also, people, because some people may not want to admit it, but I spent my time watching Divorce Court, and you also directed 20 episodes of Divorce Court, which
at least 20. It was grueling. It was strange. Yeah, Divorce Court and what was the other one?
there's People's Court.
People's Court, I think it was. They were both American, but they were filmed here in Toronto. One was filmed at the CTV studios originally. And it was really fun to do because I hadn't done television. So doing that was a whole new experience, and I needed the money. So it was great.
And it was close to...
That's not about the art. That's about the money.
Well, you had a lot of stuff going on. We all need money. People forget about that. So what we've learned here is that when you people who go to Comic Cons and get upset because the celebrities have canceled out because something else comes out, it happens to theater and other productions as well. It's not just you. This is an ongoing thing in the world. And sometimes it could even be your brother that caused it. So you need to look at him sus. Now, this morning we talked about a tragedy that happened with all of your work, because I am okay. This is the story, guys. As a huge The Ghost of Mrs. Moore fan, the movie, the television series, reading the book, and as I was looking at all of Reva's accomplishments, I saw that she had produced and directed the original Ghost of Mrs. Moore in Toronto, the musical, for theater. So I was very excited about that. And I said, is there anywhere one could ever find a copy of this? And what happened to it all, Reva?
It was stored in a basement. It was a flood caused by the house itself. The people were away that were housing it, and the pipes burst and it froze, and everything was ruined. It was just devastating. There were 100 plays, and I think 10 of them weren't there. They were with me because I was having them transferred onto VHS for a lecture I was giving. So they were the only ones that I had. And Ghost of Mrs. Muir, which I got to tell you, my daughter loved it. It was her very favorite. I do have a cassette of the music. That I do have. But it was her favorite, and she was devastated that it was gone. It was done. Because those cassettes, the video, these huge video tapes, They weren't beta. They were something else. I can't remember what it was called, but
There
they
was
were.
two. Yeah, there was two at the time.
What do you mean?
Like when the movies first came out, I remember there was like beta. There was like two in competition.
No, these were made by. These were the
Oh,
professional,
okay, the professional.
not the
Okay,
ones
okay, yeah,
you
yeah.
rent.
Okay, got that.
And we had a deal at the theater with Rogers. They were training videographers, and so the deal was they could come and they could video our shows. They couldn't use them, but they could video them. But we got a copy in return. So these were professionally done. They were incredibly well done, and they were all destroyed. It was.
And I'm crying because
And me
this thing
too.
existed, and I will never.
If I can figure out how to get that music, I'll see if I can find somebody who can get the music onto USB, and I will get it to you. So you
I would love that because I want
because the music is the story. The whole story is there.
Yeah, because it's all done in song. So I could just not visualize it. But did you ever keep any posters or anything from your productions?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I have everything. All those things are in a warehouse because once that happened, anything else that I had that was safe, we moved into a warehouse. And the Ontario Archives is now going to be taking all of the stuff that I have, whatever videos I have left, and program books and flyers and posters. It's all going to go to the archive soon. So I have a lot.
So they have been saved, and I would
Those have
really
been saved.
appreciate. Yeah, yeah. So I'm doing so a lot today because you keep sending me on these trains of thought, and I'm like, no, I can't take the whole train to its destination because I don't have time. But we are definitely going. Okay, the important stuff. So first of all, I wanted to nag you a little because in searching your stuff, I, obviously go to what is it called? IMG, which has all the stuff on all the shows in the world and everybody who's directed in that. But apparently you have to put your own information in there. So Reva, you need to go out of the IMGs of the world and put directed to, did this, did that. It would make my life much easier. And two, you're working on a new. So you're basically just working on your writing and editing at this point.
Right now, I'm editing another author, 250-page. It's actually a collection of short stories. So I'm finishing that up. That's what I do for a living. And I have another collection of short stories of my own, which is going to be a new thing for me. And I haven't tried to get it published yet, and I'm not quite finished. I need to do one last draft. It's called The Strange Spectrum of Mysterious Mishaps, or The Curious Book of Colors. And it's a whole bunch of stories that kind of have the characters kind of end up with a comeuppance at the end. But they're kind of funny. Some of them are sad, but most of them are quite funny and
to you
a little shocking. And
it's not for the kiddies.
no, not really.
And so we're probably looking at a 25 or a 2026.
I would say probably 26. Yeah. I have to check out publishers. The first book was published in Canada with the best experience of my life. The next two were published in the States. Not so good. And it's not really their fault. They did a good job on the book and so on, but it's just that there are so many books in the world today. There are so many people, but they're not all readers. So publishers are inundated with manuscripts, and people are submitting left, right, and center because everybody with a keyboard is now a writer. So it's very hard to get space. And like I said, I'm not on social media, so I can't self-promote. So it makes it more difficult. I mean, my first book did really well and was everywhere. But as you saw, Kobo doesn't have these books, and the books, Chapters doesn't have the books. Mind you, if you call Chapters, they'll get it for you. They will
Right,
order it.
right. So it's not, do not blame Reva that they are not on Kobo, because
Oh,
that
I'd
is
love it.
something that her publishers are not doing for her. It is, if you were on, like, I know a lot of indie writers who have done that because of their frustrations with publishers. On the other hand, publishers do provide services, so it's a question that's out there, but I would like to see it soon. Mr. Griner has found a way to correct me this week in that it is IMB, not IMG. See, I thought it was Brian, but I couldn't read my writing. I was scooping down so many notes. You don't know everything this woman has done. But if you'd like to, we will be planning a second. Did you have fun, Reva?
I had a great time.
Would you like to come
Terrific.
back and visit again?
Anytime.
Okay,
Anytime.
so we
You
will be
are
having.
delightful. You really are.
Thank you. I'm going to blow my own horn here, only because we talked about plays and theater and that. I once worked a psychic fair, amazingly enough, as the announcer or whatever. And the two gentlemen that ran it, the one worked PR for Broadway. And he goes, you know what? I give you 10 out of 10 stars for being delightful. And I said, can I get that for a resume? Like, I need that.
Yes. Quote me. You're delightful.
Yeah. Oh, this is my favorite thing to be. Okay, people. Brian, did you hear that? I'm delightful. We see you in the moon. Okay. Zora has said, lose the last one. I'm losing it. Oh, don't forget the AI help or intervention. Okay. And I'm familiar with the pain of losing literary or artistic work during COVID. I wrote to Reva and she comforted me. I have a feeling Reva comforts a lot of people. So I have to, you know what? Mississauga is as far away from me right now as London, England, as far as my ability to get places. But someday, see, I'm inviting myself. Someday I have to go meet everybody, and because it's just been so much fun interviewing all of you ladies. So you can get Reva's books on Amazon, and do they have them?
Barnes and Noble.
Barnes and Noble.
Chapters will order it.
And Chapters.
You can get it on chapters.ca. Yeah.
Oh, you can get it on Chapters.
I believe you can. You never know, because
well, this is what I'm saying. I did not see that. I'm going to go check and I'll tattle, because I think everybody needs to be able to get the water buffalo that shed her girdle, and I didn't see it on ebook on there. So
do you have are we over time? Do you have
it doesn't matter.
Okay, I just want to say that I know Zora's had the same issue, and a lot of authors that I know have had this particular issue I'm going to describe. It used to be when a book came out, like my first book, for example, it automatically went into every library. Every library had it. That's just the way it was. The distributor sent it out. There's a central library distribution, and they would get the book and it would just automatically end up in the library. It is almost impossible to get a book into the library today. I mean, I guess if you're Margaret Atwood, you don't have a problem, but it is so difficult. And a young man that I met at a writer's event read my book and he loved it. And he said, if you give me a copy, I will try and get it into my library. And if I can't, I'll bring it back. He said, but I'll get it in. So he took a hard copy, took it to the library. In the next meeting, he brought it back. He said he was so upset. If you don't live in that particular area, they won't take your book. And if you do live in the same area as the author, local, this is all if you're a Canadian local author, then people from the area have to come in and ask for the book. If they come in and there's a demand, then they'll get the book. So this is really terrible, because I see a lot of US writers or, international writers, their books are in the libraries and in Chapters, and we can't get our books into Chapters or into the libraries. So if people that are listening, not just for me, but for any author, if people would go and take a little bit of time, or if they're in the area, go in and ask for these books. The libraries will, you need several people to do it, but the libraries will eventually get them, and so will chapters. But you have to ask.
So did you hear that? I think you can even ask on the internet, on a library's website.
Yeah.
So you don't even
Whatever
have
it takes. I don't know about that,
whatever,
but I'm sure you're right.
and we'll move this around because it is the same books being read again and again. And if we want to get individual voices, if we want to get books that deal with subjects such as the subjects you wrote about it, we need to go ask for that.
Even Zora's book. I mean, this is a wonderful, it's a memoir, but it's an exciting adventure book. She can't get it into, across the country. It's not everywhere. It should be everywhere because it's a unique
No, that
experience.
is, I was just turning the page to see what she had to say.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was very, very involved in that book. Overdrive. People can use it to get your work through that. Okay, Janice, what are we saying? Overdrive. People can use it to get your work through that app as long as you have one copy in your local library. So, and then if more people get it through Overdrive, it will that's one of the EPUBs. It's sad you have to ask for a book now. It really is, Robin. It is. I mean, this is one of the reasons I started this. There are so many books out there, and it's a job we have as individuals to sort through them and say, hey, I found this one, or I found this one, and this relates to that. It was in chapters, but not worth my effort. It is the time they. Yeah, this is the point, Sarah. I'm in a hurry now. I'm only going to think. But, it's partially the responsibility of the readers. And I am not reading shame. I think just read, people, just read. I don't care what you're reading. But do try something new once in a while because that and it's worth it. Look at me. I have no idea what I'm going to be reading next. And that's, well, I do. I have a pile, but after that pile's over, I have met some of the most interesting books and people, but we're talking about the books here. I've met some of the most interesting books, and I never would have thought to even the subject matter or anything. I wouldn't have if I hadn't talked to your writers group, I wouldn't have read Sora's book or Kim Kaye's or Peter Gay's. And these are some very big topics with different perspectives, and they're just fantastic. Yes, Sarah, you're going to be here on. Wait, I need to get those glasses. Janice agrees with Simon. I mean, with oh, Janice agrees with Robin and okay. So anyways, I'm stopping. Comments are going I am now officially closing the comments, guys, and we're going to go over to I can't see that now. Okay. Calm down, Vicky. Go try something new. Ask your library for it if it looks interesting in the catalog. If you're on one of the online purchases, ask your library about it. I've even put books on hold and that weren't there yet. In our library, you can put a book on hold and then you find out they haven't purchased it yet. But if enough people put it on hold, it's going to eventually show up. Now, my problem is don't write any more comments, guys. Somehow my computer got too big and now I can't find how to get out of the comment section to play because I can't find okay, let me come small. All right, so we'll just keep talking. There we go. Come on. If I take that, Okay. I'm just going to pull this out of here and see how it goes. So, thank you so much for coming. Reva, it's just been a joy, and there's so much more to talk about.
This was a pleasure, and I don't know if you really realize how much you're doing for writers, really.
Well, Amazon, after all that, I take Amazon cards. My reading budget goes. I'm going for something
People
new.
should be sending you books.
Well, people do, but
Good.
sometimes I just want to check something out beforehand. So people, there's a lot of kind authors out there, and they send me like 3 books. And bookmarks and the whole deal. So, and I am good with ebooks as well. I can go either or. For example, as after reading this one all one day.
You did that in one day?
No, I said it took more than one day, but I
Oh,
did read it for a day during my reading day. This arm was getting sore. So there are pros and cons. But then when I wanted to go and check out about the 1973 Torino that turned out not to be the Easter egg I thought it was easier to find than I find in ebooks. It's very difficult to find my way out. So we're going to go out without music today. We're going to say goodbye to Reva. And for the rest of you, I will see you all next week. And until then, may your coffee be hot and your story sweet. Thanks for listening, everyone. And I will say goodbye to Reva. And then I will say goodbye to myself. And we're going to, wait. Let's go back and end this.